Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about service as a spiritual principle and the question, how can I be of service? And this is inspired by the second of the 4 questions in the book titled The 4 Questions, A Pathway to Inner Peace by Vaisesika Dasa. And these questions are rooted in the Vedas, a collection of ancient Sanskrit texts that are the oldest scriptures of Hinduism. And the word Veda means knowledge. And as a student of spiritual knowledge or wisdom teachings, we will find the same great truths over and over again in different language, different presentations, through all of the great religious and personal growth traditions. Great truths are like spiritual laws, and like the laws of chemistry and physics, when we know some of the basic ones, we can work with them to make our lives easier and more productive. If we learn about temperature and biochemistry, we can cook things. Combustion and electricity allow us to create vehicles to move around in. And we all work with gravity constantly when we pick things up, carry them or put them down. And we've created lots of tools working with those laws in modern life to help us do amazing things. And when we work with spiritual laws, they also help us create systems, practices, or tools to expand our possibilities and enrich our life experience. And so this is the second in a 4-part series looking at the 4 questions. And the first question was, what is my purpose? You can check that out in episode 226, but they don't have to be taken in order. And so I want you to notice your emotional, mental, or body response to this question. How can I be of service? How can I be of service? And just notice what comes up for you with that question. It's going to be unique to every person. Some people may think, service, are you asking me to do more? I already do way too much for everybody else. For others, the concept of service might be a brand new idea. What do you even mean by service? And still others might query, who am I asking this question to? And good questions always raise more questions and give us an opportunity to deepen our self-inquiry. The concept of service is grounded in the idea that we live in an interactive universe, that there's a feedback loop here, and that on some level we get back what we put out. The principle of reciprocity, exchanging something in return for something else, either now or in the future. And on a purely human level, we work with reciprocity all the time. That's what money is for, exchanging energy for goods and services. Because money is energy. I worked in the service industry as a house cleaner for a long time. I've actually done lots of service work. Still do service work, actually. Went from cleaning houses to cleaning psyches. People pay me for my time and effort. And all relationships are transactional, whether we're conscious about it or not. We are always in exchange with the people, places, and things in our life. How I treat my pets, my plants, or my people has a lot to do with what they offer me back. If I fail to water my plants or find the right windows for them or repot them, they will be shriveled and unbeautiful. If I don't walk or care for my dog, they get fat, depressed. They might chew on things I don't want them to or become aggressive because they're bored or neglected. And for many of us, most powerfully, how I participate in relationships, what I put out, and how I choose to be of service in those relationships determines the quality of the interactions that I have. And when we bring this question to the spiritual plane, for me, that's where things get really interesting. If I ask God or Goddess, how can I be of service? For the more secular-minded, how can I serve the world? For the environmentally conscious, how can I serve the earth? And asking this question sincerely and conversationally immediately engages us in relationship with that we are asking, be it God, the earth, or the larger causes that we might be interested in. And service is perhaps the most potent antidote to existential angst or distress. If you're concerned about politics, if you're concerned about the environment, if you're concerned about the suffering in the world, are you focusing on the problem or are you participating in the solution? And the great thinkers and doers of the world consistently present service as the way to thrive. St. Francis of Assisi says, "For it is in giving that we receive." Mahatma Gandhi, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in service to others." Author Maya Angelou says, "I have found that among its other benefits, giving liberates the soul of the giver." Boxing champion and human activist Muhammad Ali said, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." And so, of course, we have this level of personal service to others. If I am kind to people I love, they will be kind to me in return. And if they're not, I might want to question those relationships. If I have a job, there is a service exchange happening. I work and they pay me. When we develop the mindset of giving first as a way to receive, it really puts us in an empowered position. So I would call this empowered service. When I ask, rather than being forced or feeling obligated to be of service. And in its simplest form, service is the action of helping or doing work for something or someone other than yourself. Now, many of us are self-serving, and self-care could be seen as service to the self. But one of the things I notice about modern life is that we do a lot of receiving. And if it's all inflow and no outflow, or all outflow and not enough inflow, then there's an imbalance. So we're always in energetic exchange with others and with the larger system. And healthy service is a really practical way to develop healthy flow and exchange. And although our consumer culture may tell us that acquiring things or relationships, property, money, prestige, sex, romance, or security might be the road to happiness, simply acquiring, chasing, seeking, wanting can actually be one of the roots of suffering. But it's only a root of suffering if we are not giving back. Because the great key, the great mystery of service is that it is in giving that we receive what we most want. And we all want the same things. We want happiness, we want joy, we want fulfillment, we want progress, we want security, connection. We want to feel like we matter in this life. And selfless service is the shortcut to getting there. And there's a completely different experience in any circumstance or relationship in my life when I ask, what can I bring rather than what can I get? I know the huge turning point in relationship for me was when I stopped looking for the right guy and decided to become the right woman. I was always attracted and addicted to emotionally unavailable, overly sensitive people who needed rescuing. I thought I was doing service, helping people in a lot of the relationships in my life, but the returns for that service were very disappointing and painful. I had to realize I was not offering unconditional love. It was really conditional. And I was attracted to emotionally unavailable men, not because of some terrible and unfortunate twist of fate, but because I was emotionally unavailable myself. And so for me, this question of service is best asked on a spiritual level rather than a personal level. That's the direct path to growth. There's a lot to learn about our interrelationships and our unique configurations of exchange with people, but selfless service on the spiritual plane, doing good in the world without an expectation of direct return, that's the real key that the wise ones are pointing to. The universe is actually a closed system, and nothing that happens here goes unnoticed in the energetic field. If I put out love, the quality of the love that I put out will come back to me. If I am kind, compassionate, kindness and compassion will become the pond that I swim in. If I am generous without expectation, generosity will return to me. When I started doing spiritual psychology work over 20 years ago, I gave away my work for free for well over a year. Now, some of that, of course, was just to practice and develop my skills, but it was also for the joy of doing this work, and it was service in the bank. Now, there is a parallel principle that I have discovered, which is that all good service serves the server. And so whatever acts of service I'm doing in the world, if they feel bad, then there's some dysfunction happening. And I might want to look more deeply at it. Giving endlessly to someone who is a hungry ghost or a bottomless pit of need, and then I feel resentful, that's not good service. But this attitude shift from self-centered to selfless engages us with the larger system in a completely empowered way. As I heard someone recently say, I may not be much, but I'm all I think about. Service for me has been a really potent path in my own personal growth and the development of my own self-love and self-esteem. When I first got into recovery, I had a lot of self-hatred, and I heard that service is to move from thinking less of myself to thinking of myself less. And being selfless actually has this mysterious catalytic force to create a different experience of myself. I get out of the way and God can do the work, I guess. And so the key of service is not to expect direct feedback, but to watch out for indirect feedback. That when I do good service, I feel good almost instantly. And so the simplest way to practice is to do 2 acts of service every day and not get caught. Whether it's wiping the counter in a public bathroom, picking up some trash on the street, helping an older person, giving a compliment to the person behind the counter. Tiny acts of kindness are service. And to do service anonymously, to not get found out, for me has been foundational in developing a very intimate relationship with Source. Because God and Goddess are always watching. And we may be horrified by that. I know I have been at times in my life. And when I'm doing active service in the world, have an attitude or a question of how can I be of service, and a willingness to act on what comes across my path, I get winks from the universe on a daily basis. And although the benefits of service are certainly spiritual and emotional within ourselves, cultivating unconditional love, gratitude, and just a deeper sense of connection with humanity in a positive way, sometimes the benefits of service are quite practical. When my kids were little, I volunteered at their preschool, and they used to always stick me on the art table. And over time, I was so inspired by the creativity of these little tiny children smearing paint all over themselves. I returned to my own artwork that I had left alone for decades. And although the community of the preschool was fabulous, the physical plant was pretty ugly. And I ended up on the board of directors, and I volunteered to start to do some artwork there and create murals and mosaics to make the place more beautiful. I ended up doing, I think, 7 major pieces of art there. And out of that, really rediscovered myself as an adult artist. Ultimately came to direct an art nonprofit for a little while, and eventually do some pretty large public arts projects in San Francisco that I got paid for. But perhaps my favorite story about the unexpected benefits of service come from the actor Danny Trejo. I actually got to hear Danny tell this story live at a 12-step conference, but it happens to be on his Wikipedia page, so I know that I can recount it here. And Danny is a really tough-looking little Latin guy with a heart of gold who's been a character actor in a ton of movies. He usually plays the bad guy, and he had a horrific childhood. I think he started using drugs about the age of 8. He had a terribly abusive father. He had his first heroin overdose when he was 13, and his first arrest when he was 10. He spent decades in and out of prison, tremendous experiences of violence, but eventually got clean and sober. And part of getting and staying clean and sober is to help other people to get clean and sober. And he got a call one day from this kid that he'd been helping who was having trouble staying clean from cocaine. And the kid asked if he could come pick him up down at the movie studio where he was working. And Danny was like, ugh, this kid is such a pain in my neck. This wasn't what he felt like doing, but he had dedicated himself to doing service work. And so he showed up, but the kid was late. He had to hang around, and he's hanging around on the movie set. And they're filming this prison scene, and the director says, I need somebody who actually knows how to fight. Danny says, I know how to fight. And they look at Danny, and Danny looks like a prison guy who knows how to fight. And so they offered him a job as an extra in the film's prison scenes. This is the film Runaway Train in 1985. And Edward Bunker, who was a former convict turned published crime author who was writing the screenplay for the film, recognized Danny from their time together in San Quentin. And remembering Trejo's boxing skills, Bunker got Trejo to be one of the main character's personal trainers and boxing advisors. And he started to make like $350 a day. When he got his first paycheck, he was like, I think this is a mistake. And they ended up giving him a speaking role, and kind of the rest is history as he became a respected Hollywood actor, being able to make use of skills that had been survival tools earlier in his life that ended up becoming a gold mine for him, all because he showed up to do selfless service for someone else. So I can't promise that you'll become a famous actor or get big paychecks for your service or hired to do public art, but you never know. The universe has its own plan for you and your unique skills to bring into the world, and showing up in selfless service is one of the most direct ways to catalyze opportunity and serendipity that I know of. Thank you so much for listening. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.